want to talk about.
Hey, PJ. There's 6 transfer quarterbacks in the Big Ten West. One school doesn't have one. It's University of Minnesota. How do you feel your quarterback stacks up in this division?
Yeah, well, I don't really know much about the other teams' quarterbacks, especially if they're transfers. I mean, we'll get to that when we start game planning everybody. But I feel really good about our quarterbacks. You know, I feel really good about the competition with each other, not against each other. I mean, Cole and Ethan have been tremendous, great teammates, and I think they've learned that from Tanner and how he handled that for the last 5-6 years that have been being there. But I feel really good about where we're at. Obviously, we have a team that's experienced on one hand, and then when you start looking at it, I mean, some can call Ethan inexperienced, some can call him he has some experience, but the some experience I'll take over no experience, and a lot of the experience he has, where he was put in a lot of really tough situations in a good way, where he was able to win a bowl game, he was able to beat Wisconsin, and as well as his teammates. Just quarterbacks obviously get credit for that when you're talking records and stuff like that. And then obviously his first start was against Penn State at Penn State in the whiteout. So I mean he's weathered already. I mean he's definitely ready for the season, and I know Cole will be too. So it's going to be a great competition to watch him go.
You told the story about Brevin and Camden 3 times, was it? How rare is it that you have guys that need to see multiple times in that environment?
There's a lot. I mean, Alex Elliott, who just joined our football team, he came to camp not only 3 times, but times 2. He had to do that over 2 years because you can see the potential in young people, and you can say, oh man, if he was just a little longer, a little bigger, maybe weighed a little bit more, if he just ran a little bit better, there's always things that you can sit there and say, okay, well, this guy can get better at. But you got to get to a certain level where your threshold is there, where you can say, all right, I'm pulling the trigger now. Like we're going to offer him. And everybody's story, everybody's treated fairly in recruiting, but not everybody's treated equally because everybody has their own story. Everybody has to develop at a different pace. And we've had a lot of stories being a developmental program where guys had to come to camp multiple years, multiple times, and then finally they get an offer, and sometimes they haven't been offered. But with Brevins, I mean, I'm telling you, his mom was pretty influential. I'm not kidding that she put her foot down and she said, what does my son have to do to have a scholarship to the place he's always dreamed of playing? And at that time, that meant a lot to me that she said that in the way she said it, because we were going to offer him that day anyway. But I had validation, too, that he really wanted to be there because there was rumors that he was going to commit, I think, to Missouri that morning or something like that, too, or already had a week before. And I never knew what was true, what wasn't, but I knew that we had a really good prospect. We just had to keep seeing him to verify that we all feel comfortable with him being a part of the program. Not anything to do with him off the field. He was a perfect fit. It was just... He's 6'7", 210. There's a lot of 6'7", 210 kids that don't get to 272. And we felt like, at the end, watching him move, we said, hey, it's worth it.
PJ, in recruiting, is it oftentimes more important to win over the mom than the dad?
I think just parents in general. I think some of the players that I actually recruit don't either have a mom and not a dad not a mom, have both. Some don't have any parents and raised by grandparents. That's what makes family so important. Is everybody's family experience is completely different. And then you put them all in a room and say, hey, we've got to come together and connect as a football team, as a family, and that's pretty tough to do. But I think that everybody has a main point of, I think, who has the biggest voice when you're recruiting. Who has the biggest voice, who's most influential, but I'll say a lot of the guys that we actually recruit, they make their own decisions. I love when they get to do that. Where mom's not making it or dad's not making it. I love when a parent says, listen, we're letting Tommy make the decision. We're guiding him. We know him better than anyone because we're his parents, and we'll guide him and steer him, but he's ultimately got to make this decision because he's the one that has to go do it, live it, and experience it every day.
Coach, you played an Illinois secondary that had a pretty good game against you guys. What made that Illinois secondary so tough, and do you think that style of defense will transfer with Coach to Purdue?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Coach Walters is one of the best defensive coordinator minds in the country, and just got a chance. We were talking earlier, and we've talked a few times and got to know each other over the course of the last few years. And the defense is just it's simply complex. Because from the outside, it doesn't look that hard. You look at it, and it's a few coverages. But the way that the coverages look identical before the ball snapped and then it changes immediately, the depth of the free safeties, the way that the athletes Coach Bielema had at Illinois, and which is well documented with the NFL draft, two of the best DBs in the country were at Illinois, and that helps with the system. But the system is hard enough despite who you even have playing in it, because it creates doubt. It creates different looks. And you've got to be able to make split-second decisions. And if you're not able to do that, they got you, because the pass rush, with all the stunts that they do, really put a lot of pressure on your quarterback. And Illinois, obviously, last year, and now again has one of the best defensive tackles in the country. So, but the scheme is a massive part of that. And I think Coach Walters being at Purdue is absolutely awesome. I think he's one of the bright young minds in the game, and really happy for him.
Coach, last year of the Big Ten West, how will you remember this era of Big Ten football overall?
Yeah, I mean, this is my 7th year being in the East and West, and, change is inevitable. I mean, it's happening. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I think, football's football. The opponents and the schedule is the opponents and the schedule. Expansion is expansion, so I don't think it changes any of that. I just think it changes based on the helicopter view and the outside view, how we look at the conference and how we look at the Big Ten title game. Other than that, there'll be a Big Ten title game. There'll be 2 teams in it. There'll be rivalry games. There's going to be additions to other teams, which is going to create even more excitement for the conference nationwide, east to west, north to south. That's the fun part about the change. So, again, change is inevitable. It was only a matter of time with the Legends division before, and then the East and West, and now we're changing it again. In 10 years, it might look even different than it looks how we're changing it now. That's what makes college football really exciting.
How important is it to keep the Floyd of Rosedale trophy alive?
Well, we haven't had a ton of success in that game right now, so we want to keep it alive because, the tradition's it's so powerful. We have 4 major rivalries at the University of Minnesota, and when they're making you pick, like, hey, pick 1 or 2, we're sitting there writing 4, and they say, cut it down to 1, and we write 4 again. That's the great thing about being at the University of Minnesota. But the Floyd of Rosedale Trophy is one of the most historic trophies in college football. College football is about the pageantry and the tradition, and we're keeping that, especially at the University of Minnesota. I know our fans are really excited about that, especially with Wisconsin and Iowa. And I'm sure having USC and UCLA coming to the league is going to create even more rivalries with somebody, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch over the years.
What's the Greg Jeffries story?
Greg Jeffries story. First of all, raise your hand if you know who Greg Jeffries is. Scott, nice job. Yeah. Scott knows. Oh, we got a passerby that raised his hand. No, you don't know Greg Jeffries?
No.
All right. I'm going to give you a quick story. This is from this year. It's a Father's Day story. Anyway, long story short, back when I was a kid, I collected memorabilia. I still do to this day. And Greg Jeffries, for some reason, was my favorite baseball player for the New York Mets. He was a swing player. He played second base and third base. I'm not sure why I like Greg Jeffries. No idea. Still can't connect it to this day. So when I was a kid, I used to write people and send them in all my cards and see if they would autograph my cards. So I write a nice letter. My mom and dad help me with the letter. I'm all excited. And I pen a letter to Greg Jeffries. Greg Jeffries, you're my favorite baseball player. Will you please sign my cards? Blah, blah, blah. Back then, you couldn't tweet them. Couldn't get them on Instagram. Couldn't find them on the internet. So I wait a day, nothing. 2 days, nothing. Week, nothing. Month, nothing. Year, nothing. Years, nothing. Decades, nothing from Greg Jeffries, ever. And I'm not calling Greg Jeffries out, just making an example. So to this day, any letter, any email that I get, I always write back. And everybody's like, why do you always write back? I said, because of the Greg Jeffries story. And then they usually just leave because they don't want to hear it. So long story short, it's Father's Day, working on Father's Day weekend. And I didn't get a chance to see my kids on Father's Day, so I'm with our team. And I tell the story to my team about 2 months ago because I'm talking about how you treat people, right? And their first impressions, and you never know how things are going to be down the road. And so just make sure you treat people the right way. And it was just one of those conversations in a team meeting. And I said, because it'll stick with you. And some of the things you do are all based on our past experience. Long story short, I'm talking in this other team meeting, and Brevin Spanford stops and says, Coach, stop. I have to interrupt the team meeting. I'm like, wow, okay, all right. He's like, Coach, we got you a Father's Day gift. And I'm like, I don't get many gifts. I get a lot of criticism. I just don't get a lot of gifts. And he goes, here you go. And he hands me a box. I open the box, and it's an autographed Greg Jeffries card. And I tell you what, it was, I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say. So it was one of the best Father's Day gifts I've ever gotten. and it happened to come from my team. And great story though, because it just and to this day I write everybody back, good or bad. And some people are surprised I actually wrote them back. So, but thank you, Greg Jeffries, teaching me a very big lesson. I don't even know where Greg Jeffries is these days.
He never actually connected with him.
Oh, he did not connect him, nor would he really care who I was or who I am now. So, again, this is not a blast at him, it's an example. And but I have his card now, so thank you, Greg. And it's autographed.
Hey, PJ, did you take, during the 2018 investigation from the U.S. Council for Athletes' Health, were you one of the 3 men's coaches that was interviewed?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, from the internal report, the investigation that was done, were you one of the 3 coaches? There was 3 men's head coaches.
Yes, they did interview us.
And did you get to review it when it was over, like the whole report?
It was over some of the allegations that were provided.
Yeah. And did all the coaches in other departments also get this, or was it?
I don't recall that. I don't have any information on that.
PJ, with NBC, CBS, Fox coming all together, what's that do for Minnesota recruiting?
Are you just talking about in terms of the TV?
Yeah.
Right. I think it's huge. Again, we're talking about a nationwide conference. We're talking about coast to coast. I think anytime that the Big Ten can get its brand and its universities out there nationwide, and we have alumni and living alumni everywhere, right? And I think it's really important. We have a ton of living alumni in the California, LA area. And when you start signing the TV deals that we're signing, I mean, that just makes the Big Ten brand bigger and bigger and bigger, and then creates the fan experience to be something absolutely amazing. And I think that's what this is all about, is creating the fan experience to be better and better. And I think the NFL's done a really good job of that. And I think when you start looking at the major colleges, conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're doing the same thing.
When you step into a Minnesota high school now, have you felt or seen a discernible difference between day one when you took the job to what your twins saw?
I do, I really do. And I think, we've worked really hard at connecting our Minnesota high school coaches to our program, connecting our Minnesota student athletes to our program. And I think there's been a big focus, and sometimes people are like, well, you got 10 players in the state of Minnesota, you need to get all of them. And I'm like, well, what if we're not a fit for all of them? And not every player from the state of Florida goes to Florida. Not every player from the state of Texas goes to Texas. Not every player from Missouri goes to Missouri, right? It's all about fit. But I am proud that we have 8 of the top 10 kids committed for next year's class. Very proud from the state of Minnesota. That doesn't mean we're always going to fit everybody. Recruiting is about selection and fit. I think more and more kids even these days are picking it based on, NIL, money, packages. But that's fine. But once you get there, you still have to have the experience. And that experience should fit you. And no program's perfect. No program fits everybody. And so we do everything we can to select and have them select, knowing that this is what we do in our program. Academically, here's the expectation. Socially, here's the expectation. Athletically, here's the expectation. And you're going to have to serve and give, and you're going to have to want to do that. And, and guys know that ahead of time. It's not like they get there and say, whoa, this is not what I thought in recruiting. They know what they're doing, and that way you can vet those players out during the recruiting cycle on both ways, us for them and them for us. And just proud of our staff's effort on focusing on the state of Minnesota even more, and having our young people grow up as Gopher fans. We talked about this years ago. Our little kids camp. We had about 400 kids at our little kids camp the other day. I think it's the funnest camp in America. We're talking about fun. Keep football fun, right? And all of a sudden, these 9 and 10-year-olds, in a few years, we're going to be recruiting them. And you need to start there. We're starting to see some of the kids we're recruiting were actually at our camp. And they dreamed of becoming a Gopher after that. And that's what's so fun about it. You got to be able to take care of your own, but you also have to have cultural sustainability. Even before we got there, there was, 7 head coaches in, 15, 16 years, something like that, some statistic, right? Where there was lots of turnover. Well, if you can have cultural sustainability and have that, then everybody knows what to expect from your program, and they grow up that way. I think some of the best teams in our conference have had that. People grow up in the state dreaming of being at that school.
You mentioned, sorry if this has been addressed, but you mentioned earlier how sort of the anonymous player complaints have been a recurring sort of off-season thing. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's similar reports, and I will say a lot of the allegations stem from 2017 and 18 when you're taking over a program. Again, we have high standards for our players, and again, like I said before, it's especially even now with the transfer portal, as people are leaving, there's going to be more and more student athletes who leave who might not have the best experience, and I think that's for this story, it gets peddled every single year similarly. By again the majority of the players who have been removed in the program or who might not have done the right things in the program, and those are hard decisions you have to make as a leader, knowing that you're not. I haven't seen many players who've been removed from the football team who leave happy. I mean, college football doesn't promise happiness, and I think that's what's hard, especially as a leader when you're in charge of 125 men. You set a standard, you keep your program as transparent as possible, which we do. And like I said before, I mean, our athletic director, we have full support from him and our leadership at the University of Minnesota. Like I said, we've answered a lot of those questions earlier.
So you have a pretty good idea where it comes from then?
No, absolutely. I mean, players talk. Players talk, and players have a lot of pride in what and how we do it. I think sometimes the negative voices are the loudest voices. I mean, everybody in the country is going to have a negative voice, right? But when you're talking about, look at our team's response that's going through that culture, that program right now. So again, I mean, as part of leadership, you got to make some really hard decisions. You stand firm on what you believe in. You're as transparent as you possibly can be. And our administration, I mean, they know what we do and how we do it. They're there all the time.
In a weird way, do you feel